April 9. Today after work, Miss Kinnian was at the laboratory. She looked like she was glad to see me, but scared. I told her, "Don't worry, Miss Kinnian, I'm not smart yet," and she laughed. She said, "I have confidence in you, Charlie. The way you struggled so hard to read and write better than all the others. At worst, you'll have it for a little while and you're doing something for science." We are reading a very hard book. I never read such a hard book before. It's called Robinson Crusoe, about a man who gets marooned on a desert island. He's smart and figures out all kinds of things so he can have a house and food, and he's a good swimmer. Only I feel sorry because he's all alone and has no friends. But I think there must be somebody else on the island because there's a picture with this funny umbrella looking at footprints. I hope he gets a friend and not be lonely. April 10th. Miss Kinnian teaches me to spell better. She says, look at a word and close your eyes and say it over and over until you remember. I have lots of trouble with through, that you say through, and enough and tough, that you don't say anew and to. You gotta say enough and tough. That's how I used to write it before I started to get smart. I'm confused, but Miss Kinnian says there's no reason in spelling. April 14. Finished Robinson Crusoe. I want to find out more about what happens to him, but Miss Kinnian says that's all there is. Why? Miss Kinnian says I'm learning fast. She read some of the progress reports and she looked at me kind of funny. She says I'm a fine person and I'll show them all. I asked her why. She said never mind, but I shouldn't feel bad if I find out that everybody isn't nice like I think. She said for a person who God gave so little to, you've done more than a lot of people with brains they never even used. I said all my friends are smart people, but they're good. They like me and they never did anything that wasn't nice. Then she got something in her eye and she had to run out to the ladies' room. April 16. Today I learned the comma. This is a comma, a period with a tail. Miss Kinnian says it's important because it makes writing better. She said somebody could lose a lot of money if a comma isn't in the right place. I don't have any money and I don't see how a comma keeps you from losing it. But she says everybody uses commas, so I'll use them too. April 17. I used the comma wrong. It's punctuation. Miss Kinnian told me to look up long words in the dictionary to learn to spell them. I said, what's the difference if you can read it anyway? She said it's part of your education, so now on I'll look up all the words I'm not sure how to spell. It takes a long time to write that way, but I think I'm remembering. I only have to look up once, and after that I get it right. Anyway, that's how come I got the word punctuation right. It's that way in the dictionary. Miss Kinnian says a period is punctuation too, and there are lots of other marks to learn. I told her I thought all the periods had to have tails, but she said no. You got to mix them up. She showed me how to mix them up, and now I can mix up all kinds of punctuation in my writing. There are lots of rules to learn, but I'm getting them in my head. One thing I like about dear Miss Kinnian, that's the way it goes in a business letter if I ever go into business, is she always gives me a reason when I ask. She's a genius. I wish I could be smart like her. Punctuation is fun. April 18. What a dope I am. I didn't even understand what she was talking about. I read the grammar book last night and it explains the whole thing. Then I saw it was the same way as Miss Kinnian was trying to tell me, but I didn't get it. I got up in the middle of the night and the whole thing straightened out in my mind. Miss Kinnian said that the TV working in my sleep helped out. She said I reached a plateau. That's like the flat top of a hill. After I figured out how punctuation worked, I read over all my old progress reports from the beginning. Boy, did I have crazy spelling and punctuation. I told Miss Kinnian I ought to go over the pages and fix all the mistakes, but she said, no, Charlie. Dr. Niemer wants them just as they are. That's why he let you keep them after they were photostated, to see your own progress. You're coming along fast, Charlie. That made me feel good. After the lesson, I went down and played with Algernon. We don't race anymore. April 20. I feel sick inside. Not sick for a doctor, but inside my chest. It feels empty, like getting punched, and a heartburn at the same time. I wasn't going to write about it, but I guess I got to because it's important. Today was the first time I ever stayed home from work. Last night, Joe Carp and Frank Riley invited me to a party. There were lots of girls and some men from the factory. I remember how sick I got last time I drank too much. So I told Joe I didn't want anything to drink. He gave me a plain Coke instead. It tasted funny, but I thought it was just a bad taste in my mouth. We had a lot of fun for a while. Joe said I should dance with Ellen and she would teach me the steps. I fell a few times and I couldn't understand why because no one else was dancing besides Ellen and me. And all the time I was tripping because somebody's foot was always sticking out. Then, when I got up, I saw the look on Joe's face, and it gave me a funny feeling in my stomach. "He's a scream," one of the girls said. Everybody was laughing. Frank said, "I ain't laughed so much since we sent him off for the newspaper that night at Muggsy's and ditched him." "Look at him. His face is red. He's blushing. Charlie is blushing. Hey, Ellen, what'd you do to Charlie? I never saw him act like that before." I didn't know what to do or where to turn. Everyone was looking at me and laughing, and I felt naked. I wanted to hide myself. I ran out into the street, and I threw up. Then I walked home. It's a funny thing, I never knew that Joe and Frank and the others liked to have me around all the time to make fun of me. Now I know what it means when they say to pull a Charlie Gordon. I'm ashamed. Progress Report 11, April 21st. Still didn't go into the factory. I told Mrs. Flynn, my landlady, to call and tell Mr. Donegan I was sick. Mrs. Flynn looks at me very funny lately, like she's scared of me. I think it's a good thing about finding out how everybody laughs at me. I thought about it a lot. It's because I'm so dumb and I don't even know when I'm doing something dumb. People think it's funny when a dumb person can't do things the way they can. Anyway, now I know I'm getting smarter every day. I know punctuation and I can spell good. I like to look up all the hard words in the dictionary and I remember them. I'm reading a lot now, and Miss Kinnian says I read very fast. Sometimes I even understand what I'm reading about, and it stays in my mind. There are times when I can close my eyes and think of a page, and it all comes back like a picture. Besides history, geography, and arithmetic, Miss Kinnian said I should start to learn a few foreign languages. Dr. Strauss gave me more tapes to play while I sleep. I still don't understand how that conscious and unconscious mind works, but Dr. Strauss says not to worry yet. He asked me to promise that when I start learning college subjects next week, I wouldn't read any books on psychology. That is, until he gives me permission. I feel a lot better today, but I guess I'm still a little angry that all the time people were laughing and making fun of me because I wasn't so smart. When I become intelligent like Dr. Strauss says with 3 times my IQ of 68, then maybe I'll be like everyone else and people will like me and be friendly. I'm not sure what an IQ is. Dr. Niemer said it was something that measured how intelligent you were, like a scale in the drugstore. Weighs pounds, but Dr. Strauss had a big argument with him and said an IQ didn't weigh intelligence at all. He said an IQ showed how much intelligence you could get, like the numbers on the outside of a measuring cup. You still had to fill the cup up with stuff. Then, when I asked Bert, who gives me my intelligence test and works with Algernon, he said that both of them were wrong, only I had to promise not to tell them he said so. Bert says that the IQ measures a lot of different things, including some of the things you learned already, and it really isn't any good at all. So I still don't know what IQ is, except that mine is going to be over 200 soon. I didn't want to say anything, but I don't see how if they don't know what it is or where it is, I don't see how they can know how much of it you've got. Dr. Niemer says I have to take a Rorschach test tomorrow. I wonder what that is. April 22nd. I found out what a Rorschach test is. It's the test I took before the operation, the one with the ink blots on the pieces of cardboard. The man who gave me the test was the same one. I was scared to death of those ink blots. I knew he was going to ask me to find the pictures, and I knew I wouldn't be able to. I was thinking to myself, if only there was some way of knowing what kind of pictures were hidden there. Maybe there weren't any pictures at all. Maybe it was just a trick to see if I was dumb enough to look for something that wasn't there. Just thinking about that made me sore at him. "All right, Charlie," he said. "You've seen these cards before, remember?" Of course I remember. The way I said it, he knew I was angry and he looked surprised. "Yes, of course. Now I want you to look at this one. What might this be? What do you see on this card?" People see all sorts of things in these ink blots. Tell me what it might be for you, what it makes you think of. I was shocked. That wasn't what I had expected him to say at all. "You mean there are no pictures hidden in the ink blots?" He frowned and took his glasses off. "What?" "Pictures hidden in the ink blots. Last time you told me that everybody could see them, and you wanted me to find them too." He explained to me that the last time he had used almost the exact same words he was using now. I didn't believe it, and I still have the suspicion that he misled me at the time just for the fun of it. Unless, I don't know anymore. Could I have been that feeble-minded? We went through the cards slowly. One of them looked like a pair of bats tugging at something. Another one looked like two men fencing with swords. I imagined all sorts of things. I guess I got carried away, but I didn't trust him anymore, and I kept turning them around and even looking on the back to see if there was anything there I was supposed to catch. While he was making his notes, I peeked out of the corner of my eye to read it, but it was all in code that looked like this: WF plus A, DDF minus AD, ORIG, period, WF minus A, SF plus OBJ. The test still doesn't make sense to me. It seems to me that anyone could make up lies about things that they didn't really see. How could he know I wasn't making a fool of him by mentioning things that I didn't really imagine? Maybe I'll understand it when Dr. Strauss lets me read up on psychology. April 25. I figured out a new way to line up the machines in the factory, and Mr. Donegan says it will save him $10,000 a year in labor and increased production. He gave me a $25 bonus. I wanted to take Joe Carp and Frank Riley out to lunch to celebrate, but Joe said he had to buy some things for his wife, and Frank said he was meeting his cousin for lunch. I guess it'll take a little time for them to get used to the changes in me. Everybody seems to be frightened of me. When I went over to Amos Borg and tapped him on the shoulder, he jumped up in the air. People don't talk to me much anymore or kid around the way they used to. It makes the job kind of lonely. April 27. I got up the nerve today to ask Miss Kinnian to have dinner with me tomorrow night to celebrate my bonus. At first, she wasn't sure it was right, but I asked Dr. Strauss, and he said it was okay. Dr. Strauss and Dr. Niemer don't seem to be getting along so well. They're arguing all the time. This evening, when I came in to ask Dr. Strauss about having dinner with Miss Kinnian, I heard them shouting. Dr. Niemer was saying that it was his experiment and his research, and Dr. Strauss was shouting back that he contributed just as much because he found me through Miss Kinnian and he performed the operation. Dr. Strauss said that thousands of neurosurgeons might be using his technique all over the world. Dr. Niemer wanted to publish the results of the experiment at the end of this month. Dr. Strauss wanted to wait a while longer to be sure. Dr. Strauss said that Dr. Niemer was more interested in the chair of psychology at Princeton than he was in the experiment. Dr. Niemer said that Dr. Strauss was nothing but an opportunist who was trying to ride to glory on his coattails. When I left afterwards, I found myself trembling. I don't know why, for sure, but it was as if I'd seen both men clearly for the first time. I remember hearing Bert say that Dr. Niemer had a shrew of a wife who was pushing him all the time to get things published so that he could become famous. Bert said that the dream of her life was to have a big shot husband. Was Dr. Strauss really trying to ride on his coattails? Please go to part 2 in your Google Classroom to finish today's reading.